An airplane stays in the air for the exact same reason a joke gets a laugh. Science. Hi, I'm Jerry Corley here, standupcomedyclinic.com with another episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. In this episode, I'm going to give you my $55,000 joke writing tip. Also, at the end, I'm going to tell you exactly why it's called my $55,000 joke writing tip. And also, I'm going to give you as a bonus a story about a comedian who's at the top of his game, who had the biggest career implosion in modern comedy history, except for Dane Cook, right? Modern comedy history, biggest career implosion because he stopped using this $55,000 joke writing secret. And if you want to really master your comedy writing game, be sure you get Breaking Comedy's DNA. Download it once, get all the updates, and be ahead of any of your competition for eternity. Link is in the description. Before we get started, I've got to give you a little background, and the background is in comedy science. Science, that's right, science. A lot of you guys are probably like, this guy's nuts, but this is a science, believe it or not. It's hardwired. We don't laugh randomly, people. We laugh because there are certain elements and certain stimuli presented in the material. It doesn't just happen by hope. It happens because there's structures and there's stimuli presented in the material. It all came from George Carlin, who said to me, I know with 98% accuracy a joke gets a laugh before I step on stage. I said, how do you know this? He said, because the joke contains all the elements necessary for a joke to get a laugh. I said, what are those elements? He said, you're going to have to learn those on your own, kid. Then after a glass of wine and a painkiller, which was George's drug of choice at the time, he said, I think the reason I say this is because intuitively I know what they are, but I can't verbalize it. He said, my dad used to label everything. He just had labels for everything. He stayed organized that way. Maybe you can figure it out and label it all and then present it. And then other people can understand what makes this amazing form of art work. Over the years, I've developed 9 psychological laughter triggers and 13 major comedy structures. And this works with all comedians, not even most all comedians. If they use it properly, it works. A lot of comedians don't know why their jokes are getting laughs. And when you understand why, you can get up on stage with so much more confidence and know how to get a laugh with a joke. So let's go to the 9 psychological laughter triggers. You understand these, you'll start to understand comedy a little more. Those triggers are surprise, embarrassment, superiority, incongruity, recognition, release, ambivalence, configurational, and coincidence. Now pay attention to these, screenshot these in your mind, because when we're going to come back to these. Surprise is the most commonly used laughter trigger in comedy. But in order to create surprise, you have to create an expectation. Without an expectation, there is no surprise. The good news is human beings, from the time we're developing from infants to toddlers to adults, are developing constantly very acute expectations. That's how we learn to walk. That's how we learn that the stove is hot. That's how we learn to catch a ball. So you're playing catch a flies up. You hit that ball. Do you just stand there and wait for that ball to fall right where you're standing? No. You look at that ball. You guess the trajectory, the speed. You move to where that ball is anticipated to be, where it's expected to be. Bam, you catch the ball. Same thing with a football. Somebody throws it. You move to where it's going to be, catch the football. Then somebody throws a Frisbee, and that Frisbee catches air, and it's doing this. We're like, fuck, and it's gone. It's coming back. Surprise. So create an expectation, shatter the expectation. So how do you create expectation? You create situations or statements with outcomes that are anticipated. expected outcomes. I'm just kidding. Instead of I'm just kidding, what about the opposite of that? I'm just serious. Hey, nice shirt, dude. I'm just serious. Even something that simple, that dumb, could get a laugh because I've seen it done. One of my writing partner used to get up on stage and he'd do that once in a while, and I'd always just get pissed off at this ridiculously solid laugh he would get at that dumb joke. But that tells us how acute that expectation is. That's how we create it. And you got to understand that audiences are super linear. They can't think of the alternate expectation or the alternate of the anticipated or the alternate of the expected and the expected at the same time. It's impossible. The brain doesn't multitask. They're going in one direction. They're thinking linear. They're always thinking what the word or what you're intending to communicate. Look at some of the oldest comics. They use cliches or, their idioms, aphorisms, colloquialisms. If at first you don't succeed, what are we thinking? Try again. So you have W.C. Fields, who was a notorious drunk. He'd be like, if at first you don't succeed, quit. There's no use killing yourself over it. You have like Phyllis Diller, who'd be like, never go to bed angry. Stay up and fight. So to create these expectations of where you're going with the sentence or the logic, and you switch it. So we go to limericks. And now let me introduce this comedian to you, Andrew Dice Clay. You familiar with the name? Andrew Dice Clay, also known as Andrew Clay Silverstein. That was his original name, and we all know with a name like Andrew Clay Silverstein, this guy was definitely 100% Italian. Andrew Dice Clay was a rock star of comedy. He used this technique where he would take this character that he had. The character is this Cugine, this Guido, this over-the-top Italian kind of a mobster type of guy. He could be like a character archetype from like an over-the-top Grease character or an over-the-top Lords of Flatbush guy. He'd be like, hey, it's just really everything was very Brooklyn, Brilliant character, brilliant. Modern-day Archie Bunker, city version of Larry the Cable Guy. And then he would use Mother Goose nursery rhymes, limericks. And he would say the beginning part, and we'd create the second ending, the real ending, and then he would shatter it through his character and come up with the punchlines.
Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating a curds and whey. Long came a Spidey, sat down beside, he said, hey, what's in the bowl, bitch? Oh! Jack and Jill went up the hill, both with $1.25. Jill came down with $2.50. Oh!
Using this technique, he actually turned a comedian into a legit rock star. The audience was even singing along with him. They were like at a Springsteen concert or something. And through this character, Andrew Dice Clay intentionally went to the real shocking material, sometimes degrading women, which came back to bite him in the ass later on. But he had this structure. He would create an assumption, create a very acute expectation with the limericks. Little Miss Muffet's on a tuffet. What the fuck is a tuffet? Shatter that assumption through the character. Boom, joke. This is like instant joke, just add water. But brilliant through this character. He was the first comedian ever to sell out Madison Square Garden 2 nights in a row, 2 consecutive nights. Nobody else had ever done that up to that point. Now it's Dane Cook did that, right? He was actually in the 90s. He was earning $55,000 an appearance, $55,000 per appearance. So if he was at Bally's in Vegas on a Friday night doing 2 shows, that's $110,000 a night in the 90s. That's like Tiesto today making $250K per show. But Dice Man was doing this in the 90s. Andrew Dice Clay had a niche, and he appealed to a certain crowd, mostly men who were afraid of women. But as Andrew Dice Clay's career advanced and moved forward, he stopped creating expectation or an expected outcome and then shattering that expected outcome. He just thought it wasn't the surprise in the laughter trigger that was getting the laugh. He thought what was getting the laugh was the shock, not the surprise. So remember, shock doesn't get a laugh unless there's expectation, and the shock creates surprise. Shock for shock's sake will eventually wear itself out. So his jokes went from expectation of little boy blue, he needed the money. Oh, Jack and Jill went up the hill with a buck and a quarter. Jill came down with $2.50. Oh. So he had the expectation. We ran it in our head. We started finishing the endings. He would switch it to a comedic ending through his character. But then he would create scenarios that didn't create any expectation. He'd be doing jokes like, I'm standing in line at the bank and there's this chick in front of me. So I fucked her in the ass. Oh. There was no expectation. There was no surprise. Because the audience is like, well, there's no surprise there, Andy. You're fucking everybody in the ass. That's pretty much been established. So the surprise left, the structure left. It got to the point where his opening act, Wheels Parisi, was getting bigger laughs than him. The audience got tired. They didn't know what they were listening to anymore. They stopped showing up. So he went from being this rock star of a comedian, he lost the structure. The $55,000 comedy writing tip, because he was making $55,000 an appearance. And his career just fizzled out. Now, Andy's went on to do some movies and got rave reviews in Blue Jasmine. I'm not saying this to critique Andrew Dice Clay. I root for everybody to make a comeback, even if they've had a career, pivot or hit a bump in the road. I love the character. So much potential. And it's not going to get laughs without structure. It's not going to get laughs without the surprise. But if you listen to the old stuff, right? You have Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet. You have Little Boy Blue. He needed he needed the money. You have Jack and Jill went up the hill. All of these things, what do they have going? They have expectation. They have surprise. They have superiority, which makes us feel funnier than the situation, the characters in the joke. You have recognition. We all recognize these limericks. We can sing along, play along, say them. Create assumptions, shatter those assumptions. He would have incongruity, massive incongruity. Are you kidding me? Mother Goose and anal sex, or Mother Goose and blowjobs, or Mother Goose and Jack and Jill. Jill is a hooker. And then you also had ambivalence. Taking sweet nursery rhymes and going completely the opposite, going to crass. Look at all those laughter triggers he had involved in these jokes. But when he lost the structure, when these laughter triggers were no longer in the material, the audience stopped showing up. The magic was gone. The laughter stopped. He went on to act, and he's doing okay. He's last thing I saw him just before the pandemic. I actually saw him, and he had structure in his jokes. He was getting laughs again, which was great to see. I don't know if he'll ever reach the level he reached back in the day because he was so new and innovative and different. But without the structure, you don't get laughs. There's the science. That's my $55,000 comedy writing tip. So I hope this video brought some value to your day. Remember, if you like the information I'm presenting here on this video, on this channel, please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and ring that bell so that you can get the notifications when I upload new videos. And remember, any proceeds from the videos that are made through YouTube or anything else go to support Jerry's kids. My name is Jerry. I have 5 kids.